What would you do if a machine built to hunt you down came back one day to protect you instead? Welcome back for another English movie review lesson. I'm Teacher Teddy, and today, let's talk about Terminator 2: Judgment Day. The story begins by introducing a possible future in which intelligent, self-aware machines have taken over the world, leaving what remains of humanity fighting for survival, and a resistance movement is led by a man named John Connor. To change the outcome of that future, a Terminator is sent back in time to protect John Connor as a child. Notice a Terminator here, indefinite, because at this point we don't know anything specific about it yet. It's just one machine among many possible ones. That Terminator turns out to be the same model played by Arnold Schwarzenegger from the first film, but reprogrammed this time to protect John rather than to hunt his mother. Before this film even begins, an earlier model had already been sent back to hunt John's mother, Sarah, years before John was even born. Had already been sent is the past perfect once more, an event that happened before the specific past point this new story starts from. From here on, the script calls him the Terminator. Definite, because we now know exactly which one we're talking about. That's the basic rule of articles in a nutshell. A, for the first unknown mention, the once something specific has been established. Meanwhile, John's mother, Sarah Connor, has spent years preparing for the war she knows is coming, and has been locked in a psychiatric hospital since no one believes her warnings about the future. Doctors at the hospital have repeatedly dismissed Sarah's account of the coming war as a delusion. Have dismissed, present perfect, describing a pattern that continued right up to the point the story actually begins, not one isolated incident. John himself, meanwhile, is being raised by foster parents, largely disconnected from his mother, and has grown into a rebellious, streetwise kid with little respect for authority of any kind. While all this is happening, an entirely new threat arrives from the future too. An advanced prototype called the T-1000. Notice an advanced prototype. We use an, not a, because the next word starts with a vowel sound, not because of the topic itself. Articles change based on sound, not spelling. The T-1000 is made of liquid metal, able to imitate the appearance of almost anything or anyone it touches, making it a far more dangerous and difficult opponent than the machine sent to protect John. Once introduced, it's always the T-1000 from that point onward. Definite again, since there's only one T-1000 in this story, and we already know which one it is. Before any of that, though, the Terminator first has to free Sarah from the psychiatric hospital where she's being held, since the T-1000 is heading there too, disguised as a police officer to get close to her. Inside the hospital, John and the Terminator come face to face with a guard who turns out to be the T-1000 in disguise. At that exact moment, the film briefly makes us doubt which figure is really the Terminator we've been following. A clever use of the definite article to create suspense, since we assume the refers to something already fixed and known, right up until it isn't. John, his mother, and the Terminator go on the run together, while John gradually teaches the machine to behave in a more human, less purely functional way. And the Terminator, in turn, becomes John's closest protector. A tense pursuit through a shopping mall and later a storm drain follows, with the T-1000 relentlessly pursuing the group across the city. Notice a tense pursuit here, Indefinite, since this is simply one chase among several the film builds towards its climax, not a specific one we'd already established. Sarah eventually decides the only real solution is to prevent Judgment Day, the day the machine's war against humanity begins, from ever happening at all, by destroying the technology that leads to it before it's ever built. By the end of the film, the group must make a final stand against the T-1000 inside a steel factory, in a sequence built almost entirely around practical stunts and effects that still hold up today, decades on. Once the threat is finally destroyed, the Terminator makes the decision to destroy himself too, to remove the last remaining piece of the technology that could one day lead to Judgment Day. That final choice gives an ordinary machine one of cinema's more unexpectedly emotional endings. Notice how the film never once slips back into calling him a Terminator again by this point. Once the has been established this firmly, going back to the Indefinite article would feel completely wrong to an English speaker's ear, even without knowing the grammar rule by name. Now, let's talk about how this story is told. And it's worth comparing this film to Aliens, James Cameron's own earlier sequel from 1986. Critics have compared the two often, since both films follow the same basic pattern. A smaller, tense original film, followed by a much bigger, more ambitious sequel that most people now consider the stronger of the two. You can see that same approach here. A bigger budget, a more advanced villain, and a story that expands the world of the first film rather than simply repeating it. Critics have long argued that Terminator 2 is one of the rare sequels that improves on its original in almost every way. Have argued, present perfect, because this remains the ongoing consensus, decades after release. Where the first Terminator was a tense, low-budget chase film, this sequel expands the scope dramatically, while keeping the same emotional core intact. A mother and son fighting to protect their own future against an enemy that never stops and never negotiates. This episode also has 5 bonus vocabulary words to review, pulled from how critics have actually described this film. Our first word is groundbreaking. Groundbreaking describes something that introduces a completely new method or idea for the first time. The T-1000's visual effects were considered groundbreaking for a mainstream film in 1991. Our second word is seamless. Seamless describes something so smoothly done that you can't see where different parts join together. Critics praise how seamless the blend was between computer effects and practical stunts. Our third word is relentless. Relentless describes something that continues with full intensity, without ever slowing down or stopping. The T-1000 is frequently described as a relentless, unstoppable pursuer. Our fourth word is definitive. Definitive describes the best or most complete version of something, the one against which all others are measured. Terminator 2 is often called the definitive action sequel of its era. Our fifth and final word is menacing. Menacing describes something that feels threatening or dangerous, even before it actually does anything. Robert Patrick's calm, quiet performance made the T-1000 feel especially menacing. Now, let's talk about how Terminator 2 has actually been received, and why people are still discussing it more than 3 decades later. Critically, the response was, and remains, extraordinary. The film holds a 93% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, with an average rating of 8.5 out of 10. Remarkably high for a big-budget action film from any era. Commercially, it was the biggest film of its year worldwide, earning over $519 million against a production budget that was itself a record at the time. Much of the ongoing discussion centers on its visual effects, since the T-1000 was one of the first fully computer-generated main characters ever used in a mainstream blockbuster. That achievement directly paved the way for the CGI-driven blockbusters that followed it throughout the 1990s, including effects-heavy films released just a few years later. The film's UK certification history is also still discussed by film fans today. It received a 15 rating with some cuts for cinema release, further cuts for the home video version, and an uncut UK release didn't actually arrive until 2001, a full decade after its cinema debut. Online, discussion of the film today tends to focus on a few recurring topics. Whether it's the greatest sequel ever made, how well its effects still hold up compared to modern CGI, and Robert Patrick's performance as the T-1000, still regularly named among the best villains in action film history. The franchise itself has continued for decades since, with multiple further sequels, a television series, and numerous video games, though none of them have matched this film's critical reputation. That's a common pattern fans point to online. A series that peaked early, with this specific installment treated almost as its own separate achievement, somewhat set apart from the rest of the franchise that followed it. Let's go through articles. A, an, versus the from this episode. Use a or an the first time you mention something, or when you're talking about one of several possible things, not a specific known one. A Terminator is sent back in time. An advanced prototype arrives. Use the once something specific has already been introduced, or when there's only one of something in context. The Terminator becomes John's protector. The T-1000 can imitate anyone it touches. Remember the sound rule too. Use an before a vowel sound, not necessarily a vowel letter. An advanced prototype, but a unique machine, because unique actually starts with a y sound. Try describing something in your own life using a the first time you mention it, then switch to the every time after that, once your listener already knows what you mean. Let's also go through our 5 bonus vocabulary words from this episode. Groundbreaking. Introducing a completely new method or idea for the first time. The special effects were considered groundbreaking. Seamless. So smoothly done, you can't see where different parts join together. The blend of effects was seamless. Relentless. Continuing with full intensity without ever slowing down. The villain is relentless from start to finish. Definitive. The best or most complete version of something. Many call it the definitive action sequel. Menacing. Feeling threatening or dangerous, even before doing anything. His calm performance felt genuinely menacing. Try using one of these 5 words yourself, either to describe this film or another action film you know. So, what's the final verdict on Terminator 2: Judgment Day? It's a rare sequel that genuinely expands on its original rather than simply repeating it, combining then groundbreaking visual effects with real emotional stakes between its central characters. Decades on, it's still regularly named among the greatest sequels, and even the greatest action films ever made. If you enjoy large-scale action, with genuine tension, and a villain that still feels unsettling today, this holds up remarkably well. And it's well worth watching the original Terminator first, even though this film doesn't strictly require it to make complete sense. Did you enjoy Terminator 2: Judgment Day? Let me know in the comments on the video, or get in touch. If this helped you improve your English today, subscribe on YouTube, or follow along on Spotify or Apple Podcasts for more movies reviewed in slow, clear English. Interactive learning materials for this lesson can be found for free on engmoviereviews.com.